Hi everyone, happy Monday. Sorry I'm a bit late. So I'm going to look for Eva Mendes, my guest today on the topic of autism, sexuality, and gender diversity. That is the title of her book. So, alrighty, here she comes. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I was just introducing myself, so I'm just quickly going to finish my sentence. My name is Maisie, and I'm the founder of a nonprofit here in San Francisco Bay Area called Autism Career Pathways. And this account is for parents, for autistic adults, for professionals working with autistic people, and we're here hopefully to be able to learn from each other. So that's why I wanted to interview you. And so now it's your turn to introduce yourself, please.
I'm Eva Mendes, and I'm a therapist based out here in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working in the Asperger autism field for like grad school. I graduated almost 10 years ago. And
Forever, since forever.
and I'm a couples counselor, and
Mm-hmm.
I also facilitate workshops and trainings at various mental health and medical
Mm-hmm.
universities. And mostly I have a private practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see, people from all over the country and all over the world because I
Mm-hmm.
do call it like coaching for Asperger's related, because
Yeah.
with people on the spectrum, it's not like very typical counseling or therapy. It's very like goal
Right.
oriented and, supporting them in what they
Yeah.
want to do.
Right.
And I'm also an author, and I wrote 2 books. So this is the first one. And then
Yes.
this is the second one, which we're mostly going to talk about today. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so I have a list of questions that I could think of. So let's talk about um, maybe from the parenting side. So you guys, I run a parenting Instagram account called, it's just under my name at Macy Sutantio. That's really where I put together information from other autistic adults, including myself. I was a late diagnosed autism level 1. I also have sensory processing disorders and dyscalculia and other stuff that we don't have time to talk about. But yes, so from a parenting point of view, you and I talk about this. For parents and also clinicians working for parents, when an autistic young person come to us and say, "Oh, I think I'm not really sure if I'm a boy or girl. I think I'm both," being a gender fluid and all that, and the first reaction from the adults are always like, "No, but that's not right. I think you're autistic and that's why you're confused." So this is a very important, I think, topic I wanted to ask you. So what do you think about that? All these like not believing the autistic individual as a parent or clinician, so how do we go about helping the young person to really find their identity?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the whole reason I wrote the book. I think
Mm-hmm.
I said it last time in a preview that basically I go to conferences, and sometimes my own colleagues would
Mm-hmm.
talk like that to me, that
Yeah.
don't think that maybe because they're autistic, they're trying to fit in, or,
Mm-hmm.
they're not sure, or it's
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I say, okay, well, that's all fine. But, if you read the book and in my own experience, I've never found autistic people, to be confused about who they were. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sometimes they're questioning for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay too. So even if
Mm-hmm.
questions and they're like, oh, well, I thought that might be me, but oops, it isn't, um, which I actually, it's rare probably that happens.
Yeah.
But even if one has to go on that journey, that's fine. More often than not, people are not just bringing that up to their parents, because I think it is a difficult thing to bring up to your parents. Because I think, it's not like one day all of a sudden you're in a whimsical mood and you're like, oh, I'm not the gender I was born. Because usually out even to their parents, it's, maybe they've come out to other people before that. Many times they're so I don't think it's to be taken lightly. And I think you want to listen and learn on your own as much as you could. Books and materials, and maybe find therapists who do specialize in this. They are increasing more and more, and a lot of them are from the LGBT community as well, which is so I think if parents can do that and just listen and go on that journey with your child, regardless of where you end up.
Yeah, that is so important for parents to understand. Let's put aside our own personal biases, whether it comes from our culture. I grew up in Asia, and this is something that would put the whole family in crisis if you have a child who is saying something like this, that something about like I think I want to have a different gender, but I really like what you're saying about go through the journey together regardless of the destination. That's really important, and really support your autistic loved one's journey, like together. So what are some of the tips you give to parents to be supportive in this shared experiences, in the journey together of finding a family member's autistic identity and also their sexual and gender preferences? So what are some like tips for parents?
So I mean, I think I'm fortunate in terms of like where I sit, in terms of like, so the parents that do reach out to me, thankfully, are sort of already on board. And maybe for their own emotional support, how to support their loved one through, or just to kind of unpackage like their own feelings around it, which is normal. So I think parents who are not supportive, I really don't see them. I once had a person, I think, I don't know how the parents got my name or whatever, but they wanted to send this person to me so that I set them right or something. I don't know. It turns out that they're actually in my book. And then it was like, Eva actually was like encouraging me, but I never ended up speaking to the parents because they weren't adults. So there was no, they weren't part. But it is, I think, really important that they get their own support. And support from places that are not going to be biased or one way, like support that's, based on actual science and like research and a credible clinician.
Can I ask you real quick? And I read about autism and its intersectionality with gender diversity. Is it 25% or one of I just can't remember exactly. Do you know offhand?
I can't remember off that. I should probably know, but like I said,
the overlap.
My co-author is the researcher. It's probably up. Yeah, that's
about 20%, right?
Right. Yeah. And probably say it's even more, to be honest.
Even more,
Because I think that's maybe people who are out or, yeah. So, over here it is, in my book, I'm trying to find I guess more, yeah, it's far more than the general public. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
I want to put
So
might be outdated already.
yeah, exactly. But this is like for the clinicians who will be listening to this recording later, and also for parents to be aware that there is a good probability that your autistic family members might also be gender diverse, and that you can still find a community that can support you and where we can learn from that community. So do you know of any Facebook groups for parents of an autistic gender diverse loved one?
Usually, like AANE, that's two A's, NE, um,
Okay.
the Autistic Asperger Network here in Watertown, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they have some parent groups. Maybe they meet on Zoom or something before they were in,
Mm-hmm.
but now I think everything's online, and they
Yeah.
have those support groups. There
Right.
are any number of Facebook groups.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so aware because there's so much social media to keep in.
Right.
But sometimes people, they might even join them for a short amount of time, and then you just kind of notice, like, if you're getting something out of it,
Mm-hmm.
some people will lurk or whatever. It's
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So for the clinicians and professionals and therapists, one Facebook group that I highly recommend is Neurodiversity Affirmative Therapists. So I don't know if you're on there. So it's a really nicely well-run group for people like us, like doing work with autistic individuals, and that's where you can post these exactly this kind of question. Do you know of any like type of support group? And then people from all over the world really would say, oh, here's this one. It's really incredible. So I highly recommend for you guys, if you are doing what I do, like Eva and I, so to join that group. It is a close group, but it's a nice group for professionals. So that's one topic I wanted to talk to you. Talk about advice for parents. So people come to you, their parents or their teens and young adults, they already know the purpose of getting a consultation from you. So, like, what is the process? You also consult with people online, like remotely, right? And what does it include, the process as working together one-on-one or with the whole family, together or separate? And do you give people like homework to do? What's the process of helping people to unlayer and discover their own identity?
So, to be honest, I mean, I feel like a lot of my clients, because they come to me as adults,
Mm-hmm.
don't actually see anyone under 18,
Mm-hmm.
So by then, they're sort of, most of them, either like very heavily in the questioning, like past the questioning phase, but maybe in it, but towards the end of it almost,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes, most of the times, they're already chosen their
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
they're clear about who they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when I've had a couple of people where the parents have sent them to me just to kind of talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think in one case, they wanted their mom to really be there, and and
Mm-hmm.
with, if the autistic individual themselves feels like, hey, this would be helpful to have my parent here, and
Mm-hmm.
hear it from a third party person.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's useful because it's hard to articulate yourself,
Right.
like I can do some of that work in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that's useful, and some
Yeah.
sort of helped settle the parents a little bit, that okay, this is a professional talking about this, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think I think that's been
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it
Some,
sounds like you really encourage your clients to really take the lead
yes,
to to
take lead,
to
yes.
yeah, in the process, which is so important, right? Because I think for autistic people all their lives, we're used to people telling us what to do and talking over us, so it's really nice to have some guidance from somebody like you who can like kind of translate some things and unpack how you feel emotionally, and also help them to be confident about who they are and how they want to involve family members in the conversation. That is so important.
Yeah, we
Um,
go over like what the conversation
mhm.
could be like. We could role play it,
Oh, nice.
fears at rest, Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so I think that it's great when we,
Yeah.
and sometimes with some of my young adults, I also work with like a life coach
Hmm.
that work with executive functioning types of issues and things like that.
Hmm.
And then sometimes, the young individual and the parents have
Hmm.
really good relationships. And sometimes we're not so much working on these gender identity things, sometimes,
Hmm.
yeah, but sometimes we're just working on practical things.
Yeah.
So how to get a job or how to navigate this situation or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And then I do this method where every 4 weeks we do a team meeting
Hmm. Right.
with the coach and the parent.
Hmm.
So that way, everybody is on the same page. The parents bring their concern to that meeting. We all hear about it. We all discuss
Hmm.
it. And again, the client themselves takes the lead, at
Yeah. Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
So that's also something that I do. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So let's address this comment or question here from Main Benedito. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that your Instagram handle. Do you think the markers for diagnosis, communicative development, restrictive or repetitive interests and activities can be explained by the ways females and males are socialized and educated? That's a very good question. So, okay.
Can be explained by the ways. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that for females, oftentimes the autism is missed until,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, you're probably an example of that.
Yeah, like me. Yeah.
And so many times I find that I do diagnosis for a lot of adult females, and most
Hmm.
often they almost always have ADHD as a existing diagnosis,
Hmm.
anxiety and depression.
Right.
And so sometimes it's, looked at differently, or sometimes people
Yeah.
they'll sort of misconstrue the anxiety to be like
Right.
or something because
Hmm.
they speed up when they talk or they're anxious or whatever.
Yes.
You're like, oh, maybe you're bipolar. So sometimes that's like and then the borderline personality diagnosis.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
a lot of people, it's, yeah, they do get missed. And all
Right.
because of those, what we think of the archetype of the autistic person from
Mhm.
movies or like stereotypes that it is
Yeah.
this male who's, I don't know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, and I can also share from my own personal experiences growing up in Indonesia, in an Asian country where you are being gendered ever since you were a little baby. So for me, from the stories that I've heard from my caregivers and people who knew me since forever, I was the good toddler because you put me in the playpen with objects and no, I didn't make a peep for hours and hours because I was very focused in the objects, hyper focusing on objects. So I was the good child, as opposed to my younger brother. He was the opposite of me because he also had language delay, and he fit more of the profile of a PDA person. And also, but people always say boys will be boys. Boys will be the active ones, and they're the one who, if they're so hyper and they, fight with friends at school, boys will be boys, So they also then don't get the right kind of support. You know what I mean? So I think it's something, it has to be part of the conversation. I think all of these expressions of anxiety it can be tricky. I'm hoping that more conversations like this will help, I think, clinicians and therapists to be more aware of the right kind of more questions to ask parents, because people don't know what they don't know. Parents, clinicians. And I think it's really hard to diagnose somebody properly if you don't have video clips from home. It's just really hard. I don't know how you feel about giving a diagnosis with just like forms to fill out, or just reports from parents or teacher. I feel like there's still a lot of missed things.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, it has to be like a 360-degree kind of
Right.
Diagnosis, I guess,
Right.
with a number of things. I mean, because I don't specialize in children, I think
Right.
that's kind of harder,
Mm-hmm.
Also, sometimes I've had clinicians say, it's almost like, are the parents ready to hear the diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, if it's severe enough where you do need those
Yeah.
options, then you're going to really have to push for that,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. Yeah. And
It's very tricky. I think for people who can mask really well, like me, and people who mask really well, they can fake it until they make it. If they don't understand what's going on in school, if I didn't understand a lot of the social nuances, but I could just mimic other people very, very well. And then on top of that, if you're questioning your gender identity, that makes the process of understanding that self identity and self acceptance even trickier, I think, because you're thinking, maybe I'm autistic, or I'm this, I'm that. You're constantly going through these, I guess, motions. So that's where you come in, and your book. um, okay, so any advice for our listeners here who are wondering about their gender identity or gender preferences? What is your advice or tips for them?
I think read up about it, listen
Mm-hmm.
to that voice inside of yourself. There are
Mm-hmm.
amazing narratives of, non-binary folks or LGBT folks, who are
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good start,
Mm-hmm.
There is more and more material that's coming.
Right.
Kingsley
Right.
publishers who publish
Mm-hmm.
my books puts out a lot of books in this genre. So,
Mm-hmm.
go on their website
Mm-hmm.
and do a search. They have a
Yeah.
catalog
What is, can you tell us your publisher's publishing company name, please?
called Jessica Kingsley Publishers.
That's important. Remember that. I'm going to try to remember that. Jessica Kingsley Publisher. I'm going to have to put that into the caption. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, more as a specialty autism specialty publisher, and now they do a lot of psychology and wellness related books, but they still do a number of the really good autism based.
Okay, that's great. So the next question I have is about neuromixed relationships. This is a term that I use to describe, if you are in a relationship with a neurotypical and you're autistic, or you're autistic and gender diverse and in a relationship with a neurotypical partner. So one challenge I could think of, because I experience it in my own relationship, is the communication differences. So do you counsel neuromixed couples?
Yeah, I primarily do that.
Ah, okay. It's tricky. So one frustration that I have as an autistic person, I mean, it seems like in the heat of the moment when I'm trying to explain something to my husband, it's like it just goes round and round and round, and we just have to agree to disagree. So it's, I don't know, like, how do you sort things out? Like, how do you help each person to be able to have their own communication methods, if you can call it that?
So one, I think, is like explicit communication. So the non-neurodiverse individual or the non-autie has to, I think, just get used to having more explicit communication, because sometimes they may hint at something and the autistic individual is like not getting it, you know. So
Uh-huh.
like really, I think, clear, and maybe reading up also about what
Uh-huh.
is and what the needs are, you know, of a person. And that, I think, puts into context then a lot of the communication. Oftentimes with my couples, I'll say, if both of you have said the same thing twice,
Mhm.
then don't then stop it. It's time to like
Oh.
abort mission and talk, because like after the same thing the third time and the fourth time, like you're not really
Yes.
get it, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like, okay, just come back to it another time. And I often say that
Right.
you sometimes need to talk about something
Hmm.
multiple times. And
Right.
even then, it may not be fully resolved or understood, but that's kind of the point of a day-to-day like relationship, which is
Hmm.
practice. It's like having a yoga practice or meditation. It's like being in a relationship is a practice. So every day you
Right. Right.
up and then you do it again and you try a little better, you know.
Right.
Both people are willing to understand that and also
Yeah.
understand their differences, um,
Right.
and with the family of origin they grew up with and what those patterns might be, you know.
Right.
And for the, I think, the autistic individual not to just harp on things and keep going and just
Yeah.
getting out of control or spiraling,
Right.
and then
Right.
and say use a code word, um
Oh, I like that.
you know, and that way that, and maybe make it funny so that when you're doing that it immediately brings both of your attention to, okay, that's happening, we're doing this autistic spinning or whatever, you know,
Yes.
that, okay, so let's come back to it later.
I like that code word. So one thing that I struggle the most, I think, with my family members is my tone of voice. I'm a very direct communicator, and it's I have so much noise in my head and in my ears. I think I speak louder to hear myself. And I don't have the intention to, it's not like I'm scolding the other person. It's just how I speak. And people always say to me, "Why are you yelling? Don't be so aggressive." And I totally, and then I get like, "No, no, no, I'm not angry. I struggle so much just to be able to tone myself down, I suppose. And I think I'm not the easiest to live with or to have a relationship with because of that. And plus I grew up like that because my father was like that, and so we were either very, very quiet or we're just very direct and loud. And I think that's really challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I think one tip I have for the autistic individual is to kind of practice, like, you know, as part of your, like, as an extension of maybe your meditation practice or whatever mindfulness practice that you have, to kind of listen to your tone of voice every so maybe you just check it, like, be like, oh, it was that. And then, so that way you can sort of learn how to modulate it a little bit. But it is hard because upset or anxious, especially anxiety, create that tone.
Right.
I think I would say, if you do feel like you've hurt their feelings, is to go and apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry if my tone was like, I was just really this, and that's what happens. Sometimes another code word could help for that too.
Yeah, or a gesture maybe.
Or a gesture or something, right? Or I have, somebody told me this recently, they just do this now. So the husband...
Right. My husband actually does that to me. He does the gesture. Plus, sometimes I wear earplugs, so I can't hear how loud I am,
And you're wearing your plugs because noises bother you.
Because there are just some days that sounds, just random sounds, really like make me jumpy. And it's not always like that every day, but I can catch myself, so I can put on my earplugs to kind of help me regulate. So, but then I can't. Then my tone of voice gets louder because I can't. You know what I mean? So that's the other issue. But
yeah. No, and another thing I wanted to add about, like, I think the gender identity piece, and I guess even the sexuality and the overlap with autism, So even so in the in the beginning days of my career, I was doing so much, like, explicitly, like, LGBT work. I was seeing everyone, and even my first patient or client, whoever, that I started seeing as an intern, did identify as non-binary and sort of bisexual, and dress very sort of androgynous kind of way, And, so, but the thing is, in the autistic community, the whole, like, stereotypical genders, has never been like a thing. So even if you have like a cishet autistic female or a cishet autistic male, they also tend not to be very gender stereotypical in general. Right. That's why a lot of people, even for partners and stuff, are attracted to that, because they're like, even if it's like an autistic male, he might, I don't know, like cooking or doing things that are sort of not stereotypically male and woman way. So they might be totally comfortable tinkering on the car or fixing up the house, the ladder, and so they've never been those very, what you look at, like the romance novels, like the damsel grass. They're always the ones pulling up their sleeves and saying, okay, change the world, and then the whole non-binary and gender fluid stuff, just more of that,
Right. Well, autistic people are very much interest-based people.
Yes. In general, yeah.
In general, whatever that may be. It could be interested in things that spin. It could be cars, like my brother. It's just we're very much interest based. So yeah. So let's check to see if people have other comments. Somebody already read your book, and yay. Yeah, we don't have many books. So I think somebody asked the title. I typed the title again. I think I got it correctly. Autism, Sexuality, and Gender Diversity, right? And then it
gender identity, sexuality, and autism. But it's totally you should put those in the Amazon search or Google search, it'll come up. So
Yeah, so what I will do after we're done is find the book cover that I saved up and make it. So we'll get it right. So, okay. So any other questions, guys, before I let Eva go?
I think there was one question that I
What
remember
was
from
there?
last
Uh,
time. I don't know if that person is here. They
Okay.
talked about not being able to come out as autistic to their family.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I say, well, that's kind of like welcome to the club, I suppose, you know. But
Hmm.
on the other hand, it's almost like what parts of the autism do you want your family member to know? Because with
Hmm.
family, sometimes it's almost like you can either like just drop it on them and say, okay, I'm autistic, now you go figure it
Hmm.
out. Depends on what age, I guess we are, you know,
Yeah.
if it's still a minor child and they're saying that to their parents, I mean, then it is on the parents to kind of do the research and figure all that out, you know. But
Hmm.
is an adult and you have, you know, parents that are aging or whatever, I mean, you have to
Hmm.
figure out what do you want to get out of it? Do you just want them to put into context all of your
Hmm.
challenges? And maybe giving them a book would be a good idea, or
Yeah.
just be kind of priming them, kind of sowing the seed and then talking to them again and again, and maybe watching
Hmm.
a show or movie or something. Because, and it
Hmm.
is probably a lifelong kind of a conversation. It's not like a conversation
Yeah.
you could have once or twice, and especially
Hmm.
if family members
Hmm.
are close-minded, and especially a lot of moms, if their child comes and tells them that, they think, oh my God, it's my fault. Maybe I did something wrong with the parenting, and that's why now they're autistic or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think for me, from my own personal experiences, I think post-diagnosis, I understand my neurology better. And I think moving forward, my disclosure to people who know me, like cousins and, my dad, my brother, I think I want to have a better relationship. Um, I want to be able to frame things differently. So I think going back to shared experiences, like I think when you understand your neurology better, I think it's helpful also for the other family members to be able to learn from each other. So I think that might be a different way to look at it. Um, there's a comment here. Have you considered that we are treated like an extension of our parents, that it's not actually asking for assistance, but failing to have confidence to navigate life? I think parents worry. I think I am a parent myself, and I think it's understandable when you have a child who is different, and you don't know that your child is different because this child's neurology is different than yours, and it's a reaction, I think. Um, so, and I think many parents actually tend to, I think, take over. I think for many years, and that hurts. And it's just not autism specific, but I think it hurts. I can say that. What do you think, Eva?
That's why I like having the coach, because
Mm-hmm.
almost like they'd rather hear it from somebody else who's
Mm-hmm.
their parent, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whether doing the activities of daily living or find a job or dating or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you know.
Right.
I think that can help. And then you're also
Right.
forming a relationship to another person that's in your support system, you know, and
Right.
sometimes is they can even meet on campus if it's a
Right.
student,
Right.
and they may just look like anyone else and they could meet at a cafe or something. So that's not
Mm-hmm.
embarrassing, you know, it's not like your mom
Mm-hmm.
not for something.
Yeah.
Um, like learning to take public transportation. I mean, this is
Right. Yeah.
or yeah, just going and exploring, you know, a place. And yeah, and having a therapist is good too, because I
Yeah.
have a young client right now who will text me sometime like, okay, I want to go on this date. It's like I've never met this
Oh,
before. My mom thinks I shouldn't drive myself. What do you
yeah.
think? Or, you know, he's gonna pick me up or whatever it is, you know. And
Right.
oh, well, let's think about safety. Let's think about it. And then they're kicking themselves. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't do that. And
Hmm.
my parents don't think I'm like, you know, silly or foolish for not thinking that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
every 19-year-old or whatever does that. We've
Yeah.
all,
Yeah. 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 Yeah, so it's good to find a mediator, a counselor, like somebody like Eva who can kind of be Switzerland in the middle. So that's good. So how do people find you? Through Instagram and, so go ahead and share with the audience here.
website is, so my last name is actually spelled with an S, not a Z. So it's
Oh,
Eva, yeah, EVA
okay.
hyphen MENDES.com. That's my website. Currently,
Okay.
I'm so packed and busy that I'm not accepting any new clients except for if they live in Massachusetts and are looking
Right.
for evaluation. Those are the
Okay.
only new like people that I'm currently I have space for.
Okay.
Keep checking in with me. Sometimes spaces do open up and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do think A&E is a good resource, you know. They have like a database that's, I think, national. So they have clinicians
Mm-hmm.
and diagnosticians who are all over the country and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
even outside of the country. But I would say no matter where you get the recommendation from, you know, you always want to kind of like almost interview the clinician, you know. So I have
Yes.
a number of clients who call me
Mm-hmm.
a time. I had a client recently and they just wanted to talk to me to be like, to just kind of vet me out and see whether, you know, that it was a fit and they felt a connection, or they felt that I could believe them, because they were like, this is, you know. So because a lot of people say they know autistic people, they understand autism, but
Right.
then they might be like, well, really, are you really autistic? And they'll try and sort of
Yeah.
empathize, you know.
Yeah.
I think you want to really find a clinician that
Yes.
really believes you and don't have like their own
Yeah.
agenda. Or
Yeah.
the website is aane.org. AANE. Just going to put that in there. ORG.
Okay.
Okay. So, so I think you just, and then you never want to, I think you always want to be in control of your mental health and your physical health and yourself in a way, because
Mm-hmm.
even if you go to a diagnostician and they just rub you the wrong way or whatever, I would
Yeah.
just say, or say, okay, thank you, and don't go back
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to like give them a chance, I suppose, but you know,
Yeah.
if someone blatantly mean or trying to convince you otherwise, then I don't think
Yeah.
you should be seeing someone like that. And that goes for all of us, because I think we've all, you know, been there where sometimes the doctor doesn't listen to you, and
Right.
you know, and you feel like every instinct in you is screaming like, ah, this is not right, you know.
Right.
So
Right. Follow your gut instinct.
yeah,
Give it enough chances to get to know the clinician, but if you don't feel heard or respected, then run the other way.
yeah. Or bring
That's
them and say, hey, you know, this is what I feel. And if I and then on the other hand, I've had clients who come from maybe a rural area or something where there isn't a
yeah.
lot of support. Sometimes they've met like the most wonderful clinicians who are like wanting to read the materials and the books
Right.
that the client is giving them, and they're
Mm-hmm.
wanting to learn and again journey along with the client, which
Yes.
is my journey too. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
everything that I know I've learned from my clients, to be honest.
Exactly.
How
Exactly.
else, you know?
Yeah. Uh, okay. So one last question here. somebody having trouble finding a clinician or clinical practice that also don't offer ABA. Yeah, so I think, but I think you can advocate for yourself though, if you're an autistic adult or a parent of one, to just basically say that I want counseling that would help me, to be a better parent to this autistic family member. And I'm not interested in the pathology model or deficit model. So as early as possible in your therapeutic relationship to really just be honest. You challenge the clinician. What else do you have to be able to help me? And if the person said, well, I don't know, like you can pretty much tell very quickly, don't you think? If somebody is just so full of personal biases, you can tell right away.
Yeah, actually, those people are fewer and far between. I mean,
Right.
people are learning and things like that. But one of my clients, I think it's in the book even, a long
Mm-hmm.
time, they said that, if somebody has been to school 30 years ago and you have a feeling like they haven't tried to learn anything new since
Right.
then you probably shouldn't be
You
talking
can, you will
and
know.
well, any field perhaps. I mean, the other thing I wanted to say is in the back of my book,
Yeah.
the whole like the core features of like ASD, it's like a
Yeah.
chart, of traits.
Nice. Yeah.
I think that would be very useful for maybe parents. I mean, also
Yeah.
individuals themselves. But many times, if parents also wanted to work off of that list and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
these are the things that my child, I like can tell that these are some of the things, and they could say to the clinician, how can I support them? So
Yeah.
sometimes having like a concrete like piece of paper helps. So sometimes even with my adult, I'll work with the diagnostic checklist and even with the couples, because then
Mm-hmm.
we go almost trait by trait in a
Yeah.
systematic and be like, what are some of these traits that are, helping or not helping, and how can
Mm-hmm.
we have accommodations? How can we
Mm-hmm.
teach both people how to accommodate around this?
Yeah. 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 Those are all excellent comments, responses. Okay, so thank you so much, Eva, for chatting with me today. And I will hopefully be able to correctly spell and put the title of your book, but I'll tag you. And then if I'm not correct, you can help me correct it. I'm not the best speller. Yeah, well, thank you so much, you guys, for hanging out with us. And then I will publish the recording after this, and then we can revise it together.
Yes, awesome.
All right, thank you. Have a good
Yeah,
week. Bye, everyone.
everyone.